Now, welcome to another edition of Let's Talk Some Star Wars, where this time we'll be taking a look at the results of the poll that asked you to rate the Umbara story arc from Season 4 of the Clone Wars. We'll then compare those results to the other arcs we've done thus far, which really isn't many, before I then read and respond to some of your comments. Also this week I'll be showing off some of the artwork that's been sent in to me lately, though do take note I'm still not 100% caught up on emails, so if you've sent me something and you don't see it here, I'll certainly try to include it in a future video. Also, if you'd like to help decide what arc we do next, you can already head down to the comments below and do that by responding to my pinned comment with your nomination, or vote with a thumbs up if the one you'd like to see is already there. Okay, so let's get started now by taking a look at the results of the poll for the Umbara arc, where we'll see that 74% of people gave it 5 stars and thought it was amazing. 20% gave it 4 stars, 4% then gave it 3 stars and thought it was about average, which then left 1% to give it 2 stars, and a final 2% to give it only 1 star. Which then means when we do all the math here, and since this actually added up to 101%, and that happens because of the way the numbers get rounded off sometimes, I dropped 1 percentage point from the middle 3-star option for calculation purposes. Anyway, when we do all the math here, the Umbara arc ends up with a score of 4.63, which puts it into 2nd place overall, and rather close behind the Siege of Mandalore arc, and well ahead of the Clone Wars movie, which, as I mentioned in the previous video, is going to be treated as a story arc for the sake of these rankings. As for my brief thoughts on these results, well, I don't think I expected it to top the Siege of Mandalore, and to be honest, I'd be surprised, though not entirely shocked, if any of the arcs do, but I am glad to see it's hanging right up there with it. I'm glad to see the amount of love it got because it's one of my personal favorites for a couple different reasons that I'll likely get more into with the comments. And when all is said and done, I won't be all that surprised if it holds on to 2nd place till the very end, though there might be a couple arcs that could challenge for that spot or even challenge for 1st place. All I know is it's going to be fun to see how this list turns out. Okay, and now on to your comments. And once again, big thank you to everyone who votes, comments, and watches. As someone who, for whatever reason, loves statistics and rating things and so on, these videos blend two of my favorite things together, talking Star Wars and making rankings. So again, thanks, and I hope you all enjoy this series, and I'm always open to suggestions on what we could rank next. Anyway, let's now get to your comments, starting as we always do with the top rated comment, which this time came to us from Star Wars 34, who said, "This arc is the embodiment of what makes Clone Wars amazing. The clones are the number one thing I always enjoyed or loved watching as a kid, and the way that Clone Wars turned them into real characters is incredible. To me, the only major issue with the show is that there weren't more arcs and episodes like Umbara, where the only focus was the clones." And, well, I certainly wouldn't have been opposed to getting more clone episodes, or more episodes in general like this arc, though I will say one of the things I think worked out extremely well for this show, or was just a brilliant decision, was making this an anthology-style show, deciding to tell stories from multiple different perspectives about any number of things. Yes, we kind of had a core cast of characters, but every time a new episode or arc started up, you never knew what you might be in for. You never knew what kind of story they might try to tell you. And the Umbara arc was one of those times I don't think you could have really been ready for what was to come. Because, though yes, we'd had other episodes dedicated to the clones, and some really good ones too, but this was something different. This was a full arc that delved into so many different things, not only about the clones, but just in general, from the horrors of war, to loyalty and honor, to what it means to be human. And after this arc is over, if they hadn't before it, the clones do indeed feel human, which I've argued before is maybe the greatest accomplishment of the show, turning the clones into not only characters, but ones you can really feel for on so many different levels, especially considering all they went through from beginning to end, and even after the fact when you think about how hard it would be for them to cope with all they'd done. And that then kind of brings us to this comment from Mike Blatzheim, who said, "This was basically a Vietnam War movie in Star Wars. Loved the fact that the Jedi weren't the focus, and it showed well how clones had to deal with war, loss, and leadership. It would have been quite intense for younger children, and it was the point where the Clone Wars noticeably went down the darker, more mature direction. Gone were the days of Season 1 Yoda and 4 clones, and in my opinion, it was a good decision." And I totally agree about this being like a Vietnam War movie set in Star Wars. I remember the first time watching it through, and still watching it again now, just getting a different feel from these episodes, different from anything else we'd got before or would get again. There was something about the presentation that made it seem like you were there in the trenches with the clones, and that perhaps it started to let you experience what it might be like to be one of them fighting this war. Furthermore, I like that you bring up Yoda and the clones in that episode, which was the first episode of the entire series, and how Yoda tells them that he sees them all as individuals in the Force. It's actually one of my favorite scenes or moments in the whole series, especially after the fact. It's funny how it kind of alludes to one of the main themes or main accomplishments of the show, which is the clones becoming individuals in the eyes of the audience now. Alright, and next up here we have this comment from J. Amos, who said, "The Umbara arc is on par and perhaps better in some ways than the Siege of Mandalore arc. I never grow tired of watching it. When I see General Krell's utter disregard and condescension for the clones, I have an utter hatred for this well-written character. The clone dogma is originally hate-worthy, but when he shoots Krell, you realize that he genuinely believed that his previous actions were his duty. Where have we heard that before in the series? Ultimately, he does the right thing, redeeming his character. I love this arc also for its showcase of the clones, Hardcase, Jesse, and Fives. Rex was also in the spotlight. I think that this arc is unique in that it only briefly shows Anakin and Obi-Wan, but is one of my favorite arcs ever. There were other arcs in the Clone Wars which attempted to do this, but ultimately failed. I give this amazing arc its rightfully deserved A+. And I have to say here, I really love the character Dogma. I mean, I hate him within the context of the universe or story, or at least I did at first, but that's kind of the point of the character. And it's amazing how all that sort of hate and disdain you have for him sort of instantly changes the moment you realize he's the one that shot Pong Krell. Because for a moment you're conflicted about how to feel in regards to Rex having shot him, or what this could mean for him. I mean, traitor or not, danger of intel falling into the enemy hands or not, Rex just executed a Jedi, or so you thought. But then you find out it was Dogma, and you almost feel this sense of sadness for him, or at least I did, because you realize he's not the bad guy you kind of thought he might be. He's just, as Krell himself said, blindly loyal. Above all else, he wants to do what's right, but he can't see what that is until the mask literally falls away from Krell, and there's no doubt that he's a traitor. Alright, moving on, we have this comment from Neil Gadayali, and my apologies if I'm butchering your name. Anyway, Neil had this to say. 4 stars. I see why the majority give this 5 stars, but I'll make my case. I love the development of the clones in this episode, but the General Krell character knocks this down from amazing to good. It doesn't ring true with me that he turned traitor for the Jedi Order, maybe I just don't know his backstory. I feel it would have been better to depict him doing things for the greater good, and treating the clones as expendable to achieve a Republic victory. It obviously would require changes to the story, but I think it would have had depicted the decline of the Jedi as an order. I certainly do get where you're coming from here, and I think you make some great points. In some respects, I think the story may have been better if Krell wasn't revealed to be evil in the end, but instead just someone consumed by or that could only see the greater good. And if from the start he saw the clones as just tools to be used, to the point where any humanity he may have once seen in them is completely gone. Not that he doesn't just see them as tools anyway from the start, but I'm mainly talking about his motives here. Anyway, I think one of the reasons why they decided to make him evil goes along with what I was just talking about. It leads to this very powerful moment with Dogma executing him, which in a strange sort of way still kind of makes Dogma blindly loyal to the cause, because now he's willing to kill a Jedi for it. Though yes, it's also about doing what he feels is right by his brothers. It's also anger over being betrayed. And so if Krell at the end doesn't turn out to be evil and instead says, I don't care about your clones, that I only care about winning this war at any cost, well, then you remove part of the reason, the main reason, why the clones were going to execute him in the first place, which is to prevent him from giving possible intel to the enemy. And so if Dogma kills him then, it feels more like straight up vengeance than anything else, and is a very different moment entirely. Still, as you say, other things could have been changed, including killing Krell at the end, in order to make this different version work, and it still would have worked very well. Moving along now, we have this comment from Bane, who said, the scene when Rex and the other clones realized they were shooting at their own men was so heartbreaking. One of the best scenes in the Clone Wars, and one of the best story arcs. We also had this one from Sion Monaghan, who said, Rex running across the line of fire, that pulled at the heartstrings. Absolutely. The clones killing each other or realizing they were killing each other and the reaction to it, And of course, Rex ripping off his helmet and running across the lines, not even thinking or caring about how dangerous that was, only caring about stopping the carnage of his brothers killing each other, is one of the best moments ever. And it's so heartbreaking to see his reaction to it all. And I know they've been calling each other brothers from the start, and we've certainly seen previous examples of why they feel like they're brothers. But that's when you truly realize the depth of the care and compassion they have for each other. That's when them calling each other brothers takes on a whole new meaning. It's a brilliant yet haunting and tragic moment that just sticks with you for the entire run of the show. Okay, and now time to read just a few final comments. But before I do, let me say that though there are always a ton of great comments, for whatever reason this week, and maybe it's because of the subject matter, but there were so many that I read and thought, wow, this really needs to be read in the video. And now here I am making the video, and as always turns out to be the case, there's only time to include a fraction of the ones I really wanted to get in there. In other words, as I've said before, you all make these videos very hard to do, though in the best possible way. So please, even if your comment seems to never get picked, do keep leaving them. I do appreciate it, and I do read all of them, or almost all of them. And just because you're not in the video doesn't mean that it shouldn't have been, or that I didn't love what you had to say. So anyway, let's get to those final few comments, starting with this one from TokenFan32, who said, I'm a high school history teacher whose area of focus is probably 19th and 20th century Europe. One question that comes up quite often in military history from the period is, where does a soldier's obligation to follow orders end? This arc handles that question in an extremely sophisticated way. The clones represent many different possible perspectives for real-life soldiers. There is a German book, I don't know if it's been translated, called Outside the Door, about a post-World War II German soldier. He can't understand what happened to him and goes around asking his COs why they ordered him and his friends to pointless deaths. He and Dogma are wrestling with basically the same issue. I am still astonished this kids show tackled this topic as well as it does. I'm taken aback every time I watch it, 5 out of 5. Then we had this comment from Tanmaya Agrawal, who said, it was the arc that made me fall in love with the character of Captain Rex. I liked him before that, but Umbara arc made him legendary in my opinion. The way he stood up to a 7-foot muscular Jedi with 4 arms for his clone brothers is inspiring to say the least. I followed your orders, which in my opinion were severely flawed. That cost us men. Not clones, men. We also had this comment from Mandalorian637 who said, if someone tells you the clones are all the same, you show them this arc. And this one from Josh H, who said, Waxer only appeared in several episodes of the Clone Wars, yet seeing him die was a punch to the gut. Then we also had this one from Al Does a Good, who said, seeing Rex and the clones take on and overcome impossible odds throughout was super dope. Plus, the aesthetic of Umbara and a lot of the cinematography during the firefights was amazing. Then this one from Ahsoka Granger 66, who said, gives me chills every time I watch it. The way Krell acts embodied the detached Jedi much more than Mace Windu in my opinion, before you realize that he's just plain evil. Really shows you how far some of the Jedi had come from what they were meant to be. Then we also have this comment from Roboto Studios that I wanted to read in this video, not just because she brings up D. Bradley Baker, who of course voiced all the clones and deserves so much credit not just for this arc, but for giving the clones so much humanity throughout. But also I wanted to read it because it's a great comment overall, and I encourage you to pause and read it. But for now, our final comment, it comes to us from Wizard69, who said, I love it because it showed that the clones weren't just clones, they were humans. And though I think this arc was great for so many different reasons, one of them is quite simply because this was a defining moment for the clones. Yes, there were other episodes that showed us they were human before this, that they were more than some mindless army of soldiers, but it was different this time, both through presentation and the story itself. This time we felt like a part of them. This time we felt like we were there with them, that we could understand them better than ever before. This time we were one of their brothers or sisters. Well, that's all I've got for you this time. Now it's your turn to tell me what you thought of the Umbara story arc, or what you thought about the score it got, where you think it might finish, or what I or anyone else had to say about it in this video. You could also nominate or vote for which arc we do next. Either way, leave a comment below, and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.